What's up, fungal associates? Welcome to Completely Arbortrary. It's the podcast about trees and other related topics. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson. Of course, over there on the big green couch, we have Casey Clapp. Hi, Case.
Hello, Alex. I have a revelation.
Wow.
This couch is actually more of a mauve color, but the couch cushions are green.
That's a really good point, Casey. The cushions are green. The leather kind of, chassis is like a beige.
Yeah, you got to get underneath that chassis, check it out, see if something's come loose.
Oh, there's a bunch of rats in here.
Yeah.
Casey, today we're talking about a tree, and that tree, Vietnam Cypress.
Yeah, tropical. It's tropical. Any more questions?
That's right. A tropical cypress.
This is a tropical cypress, and I was excited because, there's a lot of tropical trees, and this is one in particular that I have heard about and I wanted to talk about, and I was looking around the other day, and I was like, what other trees should we talk about in our tropical vacation?
Yes.
So I was like, I want to go to Southeast Asia. I want to see what's down there.
Hell yeah.
And this is one that I thought of. Also, you know me, I love conifers, so give me an excuse to talk about a weird conifer.
Yeah.
This is a weird conifer. It was only found in 2001.
Wow.
Yes, so this is a brand new tree to science in terms of being documented and added into our taxonomic database. Because, of course, the people there have known about it for centuries, for thousands of years. In fact, they've cut a lot of them down because it has really nice wood. So this is one of those trees that isn't quite like the Wollemi pine, more like the Dawn redwood, where everyone around it's like, yeah, that tree right over there, whatever. And everyone else in the world's like, oh, my God.
Sure.
This is brand new.
Fun. Well, I'm excited to talk about it. And I just got to say, 2001, that sounds like a great year.
It was an odyssey, that's for sure.
I don't think anything went wrong in 2001.
No, it was not the start of any global situations.
No, we found a cool tree.
Yeah, that's all we need to think about.
Right now, you're going to find yourself listening to an ad, but when we get back, we will talk about this Vietnam cypress right here on Completely Arbortrary's Tropical Vacation. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary's Tropical Vacation. Casey, let's imagine that you and I are walking through a scenic little tropical zone in Vietnam.
Okay.
And we come across some Vietnam cypress. Let's ID this tree, Case.
All right, so here's the thing. This is a fascinating conifer, and it was initially confused with a couple other species. People didn't really think, it's another species. They didn't think that. They were thinking, it's just another weird variety of another tree we already know about. It's Vietnam. We've been there. People have been there. There's botanists who've looked at all the trees. This is not some place where there's going to be new trees found.
Sure.
Then they were hiking up to the top of these limestone cliffs. And in this area, there's a lot of these mountains that just kind of come up and they're really steep and very sheer and covered to the brim with tropical forests.
You say they.
They, yes.
The plant explorers or whatever?
Yes. So there's it was found by some Vietnamese botanists and then some other folks on a little tour through the area.
Okay.
And then they sent over some samples to Alois Farjan, this famous conifer guy. Yeah, he wrote the famous book that I have with me right here, The A Natural History of Conifers.
Right.
Done a lot of work with conifers in particular. Okay. This was like a little group of botanists who were going out there and then they were looking for different things and they were looking specifically for orchids. And they said, this is kind of a funny little plant. I'm going to take this back. I'm going to give it to this other guy over at Kew, which happened to be Alois Farjan. He looked at it and he said, this looks like a weird version of just another plant. Then ended up going out and some more people collected more of them because they were like, actually, I got a feeling this is new. So then they sent some other botanists out. They went directly to the trees and Alois Farjan was with them at the time.
Oh, I would have loved to see his face.
Absolutely.
Eating that crow.
So he walks up. I don't think it was quite that. I think he was more like, this feels like it might just be a weird version of another tree, but let's go find out.
Oh, okay.
So I think he was on the expedition because he was more like, okay, this is actually good enough to investigate.
That feels less dramatic.
A little less dramatic. Yeah, let's go back.
You'll never find that tree.
Oh, yeah?
Whoa, what?
Come with me. Take him on this journey. You're right. You're right. The storyline's way better.
Print the legend.
We need to let him have his arc to come and be like, I was wrong. I've learned so much.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
Good point. Good
his
point.
hero's journey.
So he was on his hero's journey.
Thank you.
They walked up and they had a bunch of, he was like, yeah, we had a bunch of gear and like porters carried their luggage. And I'm like, guys, what?
Wow.
How much do you need to go look for a tree? Like, I get it, but like, put your backpack on.
Sure.
They all got on top of this mountain and they found this weird tree and they found a branch that was dead first and they're like, oh my God, what about this? And they showed it to a local and the local was like, oh, okay. And they like turned around, came back 20 minutes later and had this like living branch. And he was like, that's the tree. Take me to that tree.
Whoa.
So what was weird about it, the very first one that he found, is that it had two different kinds of foliage growing on the leaves, or growing on the branches. So the foliage on any cypress will always start with what we call juvenile foliage. And juvenile foliage is usually kind of sharp and pokey. It's more like a needle than it is what most cypress family stuff have, which is the kind of scale-like leaves that you're probably familiar with.
Semi-aurel-like?
No, not aurels. Aurels are the fruit on...
All.
Yes. Okay, it was like, Alex, that's... No.
I think I said all in a British accent.
I think you did. Yeah, you're feeling the Victorian era steamer ship right now.
Yeah, I'm on the right side of history.
You certainly are. You certainly are. So they initially found that this tree had these two kinds of growth.
On the same branch.
On the same branch.
Okay.
And normally it's only on the very smallest like seedlings where they have these sharp needle-like growths. Then they quickly turn into normal scale-like foliage as they grow up.
Interesting.
But this, in particular, this species had some really interesting foliage no matter how you look at it. Because the scale-like foliage that you see on the mature plants looks almost like a, like there was a way to take a starburst wrapper and people would like make chains where they would like wrap up two of them together, then they would lock them together. Then you'd have like this bracelet made out of starburst wrappers.
Totally. I'm also thinking like a friendship bracelet when you're a kid, like out of those plastic strings.
Yes, but specifically the starburst wrapper because they kind of had corners that then nested inside of each other.
Sure.
So it's almost like diamonds inside diamonds inside diamonds. But the corners came out. So they're very, very layered.
Okay.
And that's exactly what these look like.
Wow.
So they are like gorgeous because they have these sharp lines of stomatal bloom in between these pairs of needles. So they have the facial pair, which is the one on top and the one on bottom, and then they have two lateral pairs on the sides. Then that repeats down the whole stem. But these are like really sharply triangular and very crisply outlined. So it looks like you have this very like this geometrical shaped like repeating pattern all the way down of these really beautiful scale-like needles.
Dang.
I'm sorry, scale-like leaves. I do that all the time, and I cannot break the habit. I'm trying really hard.
Everything's fine.
So the other kind of foliage is not like that at all. It is needle-like. It looks almost like it looks like a saguaro cypress, but one of those weird cultivars that has just the juvenile foliage. So it looks like these sharp needles that come out. In fact, it looks very similar to a smaller version of the Cunninghamia, the China fir.
Oh, yeah. So are we talking Xanthocyparis?
Yes, it is. Oh my gosh, I always get so excited to just talk about the tree. This is Xanthocyparis vietnamensis.
Okay. I was just verifying because it has a few different, like, Google doesn't really know what to do when I ask for information.
We're going to talk about that.
I'm sure you know that well.
Yes.
Yeah, they look like, I think that's a perfect description. The China fir thing.
Yeah. They're so gorgeous looking, and they grow kind of all over the place. So it has juvenile leaves that pop out. It has adult leaves that pop out. They grow in two different ways, where one has a lot of smaller branches, the more mature leaves that look like scales. Those are very, very branchy. Like one comes out, then another, then another, then another. So it splits up a lot, very much reticulates. Wow. Versus the younger foliage, it kind of grows long and doesn't really branch. It just puts out a bunch of needles going down.
Interesting.
And the needles are all decussate, so they come out in four different directions.
Wow. Okay.
It's a really fascinating, strange looking, but also not strange looking. Like you look at it and you're like, oh, that's interesting, but it looks like everything you've seen before. It looks like other cypresses.
Sure.
But it is very much just obviously different enough that you're like, okay, but that's not a cypress.
Little Frankenstein assembly of cypress parts.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Maybe I missed this. Sorry. I was looking at these photos.
Yeah, that's okay.
Is there any rhyme or reason to the variety of foliage types?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Don't know.
Just kind of some of the younger one over here, some of the older one over here.
Well, so usually if it's younger, they usually have those sharper needles so that nothing eats them. It's just like pokey and uncomfortable.
Sure.
Then as it gets larger and bigger, less likely to be predated upon by herbivores. Then the needles go back to a smaller, less pokey, more efficient leaf, but it's not as protected as otherwise.
Those same juvenile needles grow into that, or
No,
just the
no, no.
new foliage is the new type?
Exactly.
Okay.
Once one leaf is made a certain way, it's like that for its entire life.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. That would be cool, though.
It would be really cool. It just transforms itself when
Yeah.
it becomes like 5 years old.
The most underwhelming anamorph ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Casey, I would love to talk about the bark and then move on to the real money here.
Yeah, that's the move. So the bark is exfoliating in like these little thin strips, little flakes. Very, again, cypressy.
Okay.
Now, it also starts out to be a little bit purplish or reddish brownish. So it has like this very nice color to it.
Purplish.
Yes.
Wow.
But that's only when it's really young. As it ages and gets older, it becomes much more brown to brown gray. Again, very cypressy.
Yeah, it looks like your classic cypress.
It really does. And this is a common thing for everything in what is known as Xanthocyparis.
I've never heard of this.
It is because, A, it's only been around for 25 years now?
Oh, wow.
So it's a brand new genus.
Yeah.
And we'll get more to that in a second, so I'll just put a pin in that for now.
The planes hit the towers and they were like, you know what? We need a new genus of tree.
For a second, I was like, what are you talking about? Now I know what you're talking about. Yes, we need a new tree. The bark, as it gets larger, it becomes much more furrowed and a little bit more shaggy, very much like a cypress.
Cool.
It becomes brown, becomes gray and weathered. Nah, not too exciting, but I think still attractive, in my opinion.
Cypress bark doesn't have to do much to be cool.
It really doesn't.
It is sort of built in.
It's like a leather jacket. It just,
Dude,
as soon as you
totally.
put it on, everyone's like, yeah, that's all you got to do.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
It can be a cheap dime store leather jacket or it can be an Armani. Everybody looks good in one.
Everybody looks good. So it's a cypress bark.
Yeah.
Cypress bark, classic cypress bark, fibrous-y, little flaky, delightful.
Great.
So as you go up, as you look up the tree, you find all those beautiful leaves, and you say those are some of the most interesting, beautiful, curious leaves I've ever seen. Fascinating. The tree itself is really kind of gnarled because it grows on the top of these limestone cliffs, and it does not seem to grow anywhere else.
Really?
Yes,
It likes it up there.
it really does, or it's just the only place it can grow.
It's trapped.
We don't know.
Okay.
But the thing is, because it is such a really harsh environment, it doesn't tend to grow like these big, gorgeous kind of large cathedral-like trees. It really is always some scraggly thing that's kind of just barely holding on, literally and figuratively.
Sure.
And it is never found, so far as I know, as like one tall, straight, boom, there's your tree. Where every other kind of cedar or cypress, false cypress, or true cypress, they always will tend to do that, but they grow often in better, kind of more cushy environments.
Okay.
Most of the time.
This is an environmental factor?
This is potentially an environmental factor, but we don't know.
Because I'm asking, if you plant this in Oregon,
Exactly.
is it going to grow like that?
I don't know. We don't have one in Oregon.
Really?
I looked, at least that I know of. There's none at Hoyt Arboretum, and that's the biggest chance that we got.
There's a big Vietnamese population in Portland.
That is true, but I don't know how many of them really paid too much attention to this tree. We're going to find out. Now, so you also go out to the ends and you'll find these little cones.
Yes.
The cones look very strikingly similar to another tree that we have here in the Pacific Northwest.
I know it.
What is it?
Italian cypress.
Not the Italian cypress. No. He was so excited, and as soon as I said no, he said no louder, as if he had said it first. Did you guys notice that?
No, I said it first.
Oh, you did. Sorry, Alex. Sorry. Nope. You got any idea?
Hinoki cypress.
No. I said native to the Pacific Northwest, of which both of those are not. I guess
Native
I said
to the Pacific
grows here in the Pacific Northwest, which should mean native.
Is it a cypress?
It is in some regards.
Oh, it's a whatever it's called. It's a
This is actually lore. There's some lore about this.
All right, go ahead and tell me.
It is the Xanthocyparis.
No, never.
You know about this because we covered it several years ago
yeah.
in June as the yellow cedar.
Yes, I remember
Alaska
that.
yellow cedar.
Cedar, that's right. I remember that, but I would never have guessed.
Okay, so the reason I said there's some lore about it is in my book that's coming out here in October.
Hell yeah.
That I specifically go to the taxonomic, out on the taxonomic limb to say I believe that Xanthocyparis is a true cypress.
Oh, wow.
Now, we talked about why that
Scandal.
is. It's a huge scandal. We talked about it because it hybridizes with the Monterey cypress, and it does it extremely easily, and that then creates the brood we call the Leland cypress. Okay. So that means that if these are like in different genre, which right now we consider the Xanthocyparis Calotropsis nuitcatensis, that it is now a different genus that still hybridizes with another different genus, which to us is like, that kind of means that they're really closely related, which means they're probably not in different genuses.
I see.
So maybe there's something else there. But here's the thing. This cone looks strikingly similar to the Nootka cypress cone.
Okay.
So much so that when Alois Farjan found this tree, not only did he say this is a new species to science and we are putting it in Xanthocyparis, they also, the authors, included in Xanthocyparis our Nootka cypress.
Oh.
So they said, no longer are you cypress, no longer are you Calotropsis. You are now two sisters in one newly erected genus.
That's
Xanthocyparis.
Xanthocyparis.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
So what is Nucacypress's?
that is right
Latin
now
name?
Calotropsis nuitcatensis.
Nuitcatensis.
But it used to be, and at one point very recently was back again as Cypressus nuitcatensis.
Oh, not Xanthocyparis?
Correct.
Why?
Because this tree and the findings of this particular tree through taxonomy just absolutely in a tussle.
Oh, wow.
Nobody knew what was actually what.
Cool.
And there's been dozens of studies now in specifically the Cypress family, which has been in the last 25 years, one of the biggest like taxonomic kind of focal points in a long time. So we used to have all the cypresses. Then we said, actually, all of the cypresses split off between the North and South American cypresses, in Central America more specifically, and the ones from Eurasia and Africa. So those two groups were split up. But science cannot determine if they split up and then junipers split off of the new one, or if the junipers split off of cypresses and then the quote New World cypresses versus the quote Old World cypresses then also split up.
Interesting.
But we know that they're in a clade, which means they're all closely related.
I will say this, Casey. I'm having a hard time. This is like somebody's first time reading A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yes.
Like, wait,
there's so many names.
But I can appreciate the spirit of what you're saying,
Yeah.
which is that Cupressaceae is like a big mess.
It's a big mess, but not only Cupressaceae, just the genus Cupressus.
That's what, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The cypresses as a genus, Cupressus, most likely ended up starting their evolutionary journey, shall we say, several million years ago, like hundreds of millions
Set the
years
scene,
ago.
Case. Go sell it.
Here we can see millions of years ago when Pangea was not quite a... No, actually, it was after Pangea. Never mind. I completely ruined the whole setup.
You could have committed,
I
man.
could've. So after Pangea had split up and there was Laurasia, the top growing section of the world with the land in the northern hemisphere, and Gondwana in the south. Beautiful areas. Over in the southeast, what we now call Asia area, cypresses became a thing.
Okay.
They just grew out of whatever and they said, hey, we're a new thing. We're happening. This is happening. Get used to it. We're here and we're going to have a great time.
The primordial sludge.
The primordial sludge of what was Southeast Asia about, I don't know, several hundred million years ago. At least 100 or so.
Damn.
They moved to the west. So they started going over to what is now Europe, over through what is now North Africa.
This is, by the way, what we call the reverse Homo sapien.
Well,
Start in Asia and you move toward
you
Africa.
move towards Africa, yes. Well, they actually also moved up over Beringia, so they moved up to the northeast as well.
The Bering Strait.
Exactly. At the time, about 45 million years ago, that was still wide open. It was actually very much a tropical and humid area.
Really?
So it moved up over there. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So they moved up over there, and then they created this other kind of section. So it's like one species went up, and then all of the other cypresses in North America are all in one group. So they have one common ancestor. Now, on some strange timeline, everything started to change, and the climate started to become cooler, and everything started to move a little bit further south in terms of the plants. So at some point, some tree stayed up in the Pacific Northwest area where we're at right now, and started to move up, probably moved over Beringia, and then came back down. And that is one of the progenitors of our tree that we're talking about today.
Okay.
So I know it's a little bit confusing, but imagine everything started in Southeast Asia, radiated out, and then the group that ended up going to North America spawned another small group that then went back across Beringia into Southeast Asia and started growing there.
Okay.
So when we do the taxonomy of everything, this tree from Vietnam, which has no other close relatives kind of nearby, its closest relatives are all from North America.
Wow.
Its closest relative is our Nootka cypress from the beautiful Pacific Northwest.
That's so cool. We've talked about a couple trees like that are just sort of like the only member of the family across the ocean.
Exactly, or the one that stayed while everyone else moved or something. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is one of those examples, and everyone's like, so what exactly happened here? Why is this tree the only one?
Yeah.
Theoretically, there used to be more. So what's really interesting is that the ones over here in North America, Alex,
The cypresses.
the cypresses, yes, they have inherited a world that is hot and dry and not really tropical by any means of it until you get really far south. And even then, you can only really say it's kind of dry tropical.
Sure.
Maybe subtropical. Over in East Asia, though, it's completely different.
Be tropical
there is
over there.
intense tropical forest that's gone up, and it's covering that entire section of the world. So this tree, its closest relatives came essentially through Alaska over what was Beringia, which is now a Bering Strait. Now it's covered in ocean, crossed over and came down and started to live conceivably with all of its other friends in the mountains and in the area when the climate was way different.
Okay.
Started to then become more tropical over time, and now the tropical forest has moved up. And this tree now grows only with 10 other conifers, 10 other conifer species, I should say, grows up in these mountaintops, and that's the only place that they're found.
Wow.
That's the only place they can survive. Otherwise, everywhere else, they were eaten by the tropical forests.
They got stranded on a desert island.
Exactly, or a tropical desert island. But down in our area, they actually did. They got stranded on desert islands. They're islands and otherwise deserts, which is why they can't move down. It's wild to think
That's kind of sad.
how these trees did it. It is very sad, but here's another thing. We are wondering why conifers find their way to these like really harsh areas.
This is going to be the question they ask you on 60 Minutes when at the end of your career. Casey Clapp, why conifers?
Why? And then, oh man, they're going to be like, 60 minutes? More like 120. Let's get into it.
Good.
So here's the thing. The only reason that we think that this tree even still exists, along with like a diminutive version of the Douglas fir that grows over there, which is Pseudotsuga sinensis. There is a few others. There's a taxus. There's a handful of other weird conifers that grow there.
Okay.
And this one grows at the top of these limestone cliffs, mountains, and there's no other place that they grow. They're barely hanging on because there's barely any soil. So they are essentially the only possible plants to grab onto the ground and say, I'm going to live here.
Wow.
I'm going to make it work. All the tropical forests that try to come up failed. They can't compete. So
Because there's not enough soil up there?
Apparently not.
Okay.
It's just the conditions are too harsh for them to live, even though it's essentially a tropical forest and they live at like 3,000 feet elevation.
But the Vietnam cypress is already up there, so it's kind of adapted to that area.
Yes.
But it's like it can't go down, can't go up. I'll stay here and live in this
cave. It just has to stay there. Yeah.
Wild.
So the soil and the harsh conditions make it so that there's nothing else that grows there. No soil is building. So that's the only place that they've been able to eke out a living.
Wow.
Now, this, to me, the way I imagine this is that this troop of trees hiked over across from North America. They went down into the beautiful East Asian continent, and they started to hang out. And then there was this horde of zombies that started to just come up from every single location. They were all coming from the south. And they were like, what do we do? And this is also playing over millions of years.
Very slow.
What are we going to do? They ended up being the only ones that could adapt over time to get up to these very high places. And they're just like at the top of this mountain, beating all of these broadleaf trees back with sticks. And they are finally in the midst of maybe being okay. But they are covered in orchids and mosses, like all these different epiphytes. Imagine a tree that looks like a tree from here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's covered in like rare, incredibly beautiful orchids and mosses and ferns and other epiphytes and things like that.
I like how that sounds.
It would be beautiful. So this is the thing with conifers. We have seen in the whole world conifers consistently doing this exact thing where they grow in the harshest environments where these broadleaf trees can't grow.
Briscoe pine.
Exactly. A bunch of trees from etc. Think of like New Caledonia. We talked about this just last week. A bunch of weird conifers there, but there's no, like, grasses don't even exist in this area.
Yeah.
So it's an area where it's very harsh. It has ultramafic soils, which essentially are really intense from like the mantle. So they got weird chemicals in it, things like that. The Siskiyous have soils very similar.
Umbrella pine, or what is the one that grows in the Sahara?
You're thinking the Sahara
cypress.
Exactly.
Another cypress.
Exactly. Another cypress. So everyone has been like, okay, what is this? And it turns out that the conifers are not necessarily like better or worse at these things, or like the conifers, if you plant them down in traditional broadleaf tree areas, they do great.
Sure.
They crush it. We know because we plant forests of plantations of Monterey pine, for instance.
Sure.
Yet Monterey pine only grows in really weird, harsh soil conditions on the California coast natively, where nothing else can grow. No oak trees can survive. So essentially, we find that conifers are able to, for whatever reason, do the hare versus the tortoise thing, but they are the tortoise.
Okay.
So they can adapt to grow really slowly with evergreen leaves, but the thing that's a trick about them is that because their leaves are evergreen, they keep multiple years, multiple cohorts. And this is all from a wonderful chapter in Alios Farjan's book, all about the ecology of conifers.
Interesting.
And so he's like, why do we only see them in these weird places? And one of the things that he notes is that exact property where if you are a broadleaf tree, you carry one cohort of leaves per year. You drop them at the end of the year, you grow back a new one.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So if you're a conifer, every year you're actually like not quite exponentially growing your leaves, but you're growing a few more leaves, but you have also kept all the ones from last year.
Yeah.
Then the third year, you're doing the same thing. Then the fourth year, and then maybe in the fifth year, you drop the first ones, and now you kind of have this running total, but your branches and your size of your canopy is getting larger and larger. So if you can survive those first few years, then over time, you have way more leaf surface area all year round, so you're cooking.
Totally.
But it's like getting a truck that's really heavy started. You're just like, and then when you finally get up to the like max that you can go, you're out competing everything else.
Sure, it's like a long-term investment.
Exactly.
It's like small, but it'll all compound until eventually you're crushing everything else.
Yeah, but the broadleaf trees.
I don't really know how investments work. But
you totally nailed it.
Cool.
That is the thing about one of these things. And there's, a couple other, circumstances, but the broadleaf trees, they're not as able to get into these really super harsh areas because they are essentially not as well adapted to living over a long period of time in really harsh conditions because they don't necessarily keep their leaves the same way.
Okay.
And they don't make as good of connections with fungus.
True that.
That's the last thing that they talk about, where the broadleaf trees, not as many broadleaf trees have a fungal relationship as conifers.
Sure.
Almost every single conifer has its own or some group of mycorrhizal fungi.
Yeah.
So they can get better access to more nutrients in these really harsh environments. The way that they grow means that they can grow a little bit longer over the course of an entire year and slowly but surely get their place in the canopy, while everything else has to do it really fast. And if they do it too fast, then poof, they die because they've kind of outgrown their resources too quick.
Yeah. Do you think that on a long enough timeline, Casey, that conifers will like take over the world?
No, I think the exact opposite.
That broadleaf trees will take over the world.
I think slowly but surely as broadleaf trees evolve, because they are the newest kid on the block, so to speak, that they will figure out all of the tricks that conifers have already figured out.
I see.
And they will essentially take over. And conifers, even though right now conifers are, in terms of species diversity, are like a tenth or something of all the other trees in the world.
Yeah.
But in terms of like land area that they take, it's about half and half.
Interesting.
So like everywhere in the north, all the mountains over here, a bunch of every mountain almost everywhere in the northern hemisphere, same thing in the southern hemisphere, certainly in Australia, well, not necessarily Australia, in New Zealand, excuse me. You can find conifers dominating in these like higher, colder latitudes and lower latitudes, but also higher elevation. So anywhere where the broadleaf trees could struggle just a little bit, you're going to find conifers dominating.
Totally.
But that's because of these last two things we've talked about. So our Vietnamese cypress is like the perfect example of a tree that most likely found its way over when everything was really nice. But then when that wave of broadleaf trees started to like figure out, oh, we're way better at competing. We have more efficient movement of water and nutrients in our wood. We make really efficient leaves that come out and gather so much sunlight and then drain it all back in really, really well. So they've outcompeted everything where the environment's just a little bit, could go either way. It's going to go broadleafs every single time. Okay. But when it gets a little harder, now the conifers, they have those adaptations, they have those connections, those millions or, at this point, maybe hundreds of millions of years old relationships with fungus. Now the conifers are like, yeah, we kind of got this sorted out. As soon as the broadleaf trees, Alex, learn these tricks and really make it a part of their beings as, maybe the next 45 million years, I'm willing to bet that the conifers will be outcompeted then.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be like, your evergreen broadleaf trees.
Yeah.
They keep all their leaves. Then they have like a army of photosynthesizers.
Exactly, yeah. With the efficiency, yeah.
Yeah.
And the big question is, it's not necessarily a big question, but the thing to consider is that so far conifers have done a very good job of surviving for millions upon millions of years, even during the onslaught of all these broadleaf trees, all these broadleaf forests. And not even trees, small little seedlings that come up and shade out all the small seedlings on the ground. So it's a forest wide. It's just a huge competition between these two giants, right?
You're saying that conifer seedlings will outcompete broadleaf seedlings?
No, opposite. Where little seedlings of conifers that are doing their hair, and I mean that HARE, their hair thing, they would get out competed by a really quick growing trillium or something, like a small thing that's a foot tall, but it has huge leaves and it completely shades out this little guy.
Conifers are like, that's like, that phrase, that Gen Alpha phrase, let them cook.
Yeah.
It's like, let them cook.
Yeah, okay, there you go. That's it. This is it. Let them cook.
Just needs time.
I love that. Oh, you kids. I think that the conifers are going to go the way of the broadleaf tree. That's my guess.
The conifers will adapt to be more broadleaf-like?
Yes.
Interesting.
So, if it is, this is all now conjecture, but this is where I want to get your opinion. So, the most common conifers down in the tropics are podocarps. And they create, instead of a cone, a funny little berry thing.
Okay. Your yews.
Yes, yews, your totaras, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yep. So all of these kind of podocarps and all the things related to them, they have gone the way of broadleaf trees by getting animals to disperse their seeds.
I see.
They also tend to have wider leaves overall. Not like broad leaves, but their leaves are generally wider.
The animal thing is a huge win.
It's a huge win. I mean, that's what broadleaf trees did. That's how they're so successful, right?
Yeah,
One of the attributes.
Totally.
Meanwhile, I think that broadleaf trees, in order to better compete up at these high, harsh elevations or these really intense climates, I think they are going to start going the way of conifers.
I see.
So they will say, okay, we now need to adopt a relationship with fungus. So birches grow really high in elevation. They grow really high in latitudes. Those have great relationships with fungus.
I see.
So I think that they will start to do more fungus relation work. And I think
Community outreach.
it's going to be a lot of community. It's a fungal associate outreach. We need a liaison.
Sure.
I think that they will also end up over time, and there's no way to tell this. This is just complete assumptions.
That's okay here.
Thank you, Alex. I think that they will start to make more cone-like things,
Interesting.
or maybe not cone-like. But like the alder does this. The alder has shifted over to be more cone-like.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So it creates a bunch of seeds like that. So maybe that is just my hope, because then I can actually collect some of those and make two little connections. Here's my angiosperm cones. Here's my gymnosperm cones.
You're gonna have to pull a Disney and freeze
I
yourself.
will have to. Oh, man. Yeah, can we get a fact check on that? Yeah, we'll do it later.
Set it for 300 million years.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna poke a hole in your little theory.
Okay,
here.
sure. Try me, guy.
Well, okay. So you're saying simultaneously that you think that conifers will move toward broadleaf techniques and strategies. Broadleaves will move toward conifer techniques and strategies.
Yeah.
Are you saying that somewhere in the middle is like a perfect tree?
Oh.
That has all of the attributes of all the great attributes of a conifer and all the great attributes of a broadleaf tree.
Yeah.
But it has to have some honestly, defect.
That's a good question. I mean, it all depends on where you're growing, right? So I think in the higher latitudes, in the higher elevation, that's where you're going to get more broadleaf trees saying, oh, shit, you guys are doing really well. I'm going to do what you're doing.
I see.
And they will adapt. They will then be evergreen. They'll have tiny little leaves that will look more like needles. They will have spire-shaped canopies. They'll be very small. They will have wind-dispersed mechanisms to get their stuff around, because there's going to be fewer animals half the time.
Inversely, the conifers that are growing in the lowlands will be like, hey, this squirrel situation seems great.
It's pretty sweet.
Let's start growing like a acorn-type cone.
Yeah.
And let's make kind of bigger leaves, because these broadleaf trees are flourishing.
Yeah.
And we can barely get any sun on this tiny little, you know how much fucking surface area is on a needle?
Yeah.
It's none.
It's not working for
barely
us.
any light hitting that. Let's grow a little bit wider. And then over year, give it 10 million years. And pine tree, is that you?
It is.
You look like a fucking oak tree, my man.
Exactly. Yeah. That is legitimately what I think it'll do.
Okay.
Over time. This is, again, complete conjecture. There's no good reason for me to have this. I'm sure scientists would be like, that's fucking stupid.
You're a scientist, though.
Oh, thanks, Alex.
So
you're a scientist, too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
of course,
you.
obviously.
God, it's like pulling teeth.
I feel like only one who is can say another is.
Oh,
so
sure.
I thought
Like
that there was
knighthood.
a given, that you must be in order to name me one.
I see.
Sorry.
No, I'm an honorary scientist.
Okay.
Which is about as meaningful as it sounds.
Yeah, well, that means you're probably going to be probably in government here pretty soon.
Boom! Nice.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
commentary, Case.
Thank you.
And that's why people come to this podcast. Before we give our rating, Casey, we got to give some ads.
We do. We got to give some ads. I'm sorry.
So you're going to go listen to those ads like good little boys and girls. And then after the break, we will give a rating to the Vietnam Cypress right here on Completely Arbitrary's Tropical Vacation. Welcome back to Completely Arbitrary's Tropical Vacation. That was our discussion of the Vietnam Cypress. Pretty good one.
Poor thing.
And now we're going to give it a rating. And Casey, here's
Yes.
how it works.
Okay.
We're going to give some final thoughts on this tree. And then give it a rating of 0 to 10 golden palm fronds of honor as our resident expert. As our resident scientist, we'll begin with you.
Wow. Get out of here.
Wow.
Well, I happen to think this tree is quite interesting. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that it is like one of the only trees, and it's like critically endangered.
Oh, wow.
By the way, and it also has beautiful wood that people are cutting down and have for thousands of years
God.
in order to use it for lots of things.
damn
But they
it.
don't sell it everywhere. They just use it and trade it locally. So they're just like, yeah, this is our tree. We're cutting it down.
Cut
So
one, plant one.
I don't know that they always plant it, but I believe that a lot of people have reached out to the villagers and said, hey, we should like manage for these trees or else you're going to lose them. And they're probably like, oh yeah, probably. So the wood seems beautiful. Apparently it's very hard, very fragrant, very lovely, just like most cypresses. It is also a tree that grows in one of the most like beautiful areas. If you ever like have seen pictures of like this part of Vietnam or China, it's like it's out of a fantasy novel because these cliffs, these mountains are like straight up and straight down. They're covered to the brim with these like intense forests.
Yeah.
So this tree I think is cool because it to me has been one of the like it's like a wildling to me. Where everywhere else are all these crazy normal tropical forests trying to grow up and take over the spot. Yet it is like I have lived here forever on the top of this limestone cliff, and you're not allowed to come up. And if you try to come up, I will make sure that I'm still growing here and that you die.
It's like the wildlings built the wall.
Exactly. It's like they did. I know they didn't technically. Anyway, let's not talk about it. How it happens is this is like one of the trees that it came over and then everyone else was eaten by the zombie horde of tropical forest coming around. Its closest kin is thousands of miles away on the other side of the ocean. They can't decide if it's a cypress, if it's not a cypress. The taxonomy is thrown all to hell. I am in, personally, Cypress.
Okay.
I think this should be Cypressus vietnamensis. That is because I also think that Calotropsis should be Cypressus nootkatensis. So
Okay.
I'm on team Nootka cypress is a true cypress.
Cool.
So if I'm on that team, I believe I should also be on team this is also a true cypress.
Just morally.
Exactly. But also, they have been split, so they are no longer together. They're now in different genres. So if I don't really believe it, I'm okay with it being separate.
Okay.
Anyway, as it happens, I think I'm going to give this tree a 8.9.
Wow.
It's not a tree
Holy
that
shit.
is super tall. It's not a tree that's super large. It's not a tree that's going to be living for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's not a tree that is going to be constantly doing the crazy cool stuff and the superlative stuff that I love about, big, wild, crazy conifers. But this is the gnarly old tree that grows on the top of a mountain that no one else wants to go. All the signs say, turn back now, don't come here, danger, leave. And it's the one that's like, no, I'm going to be here and I will survive and I will fight off this zombie horde until the end of time.
Wow.
I think that's pretty cool.
That is dramatic.
That is how I see this tree. It's the only one down there.
I love it, Case. 8.9.
8.9.
Just knocking on the door of that golden arboretum.
It is knocking on the door. It's knocking on the top of this door.
Okay, Casey. Well, gosh, I don't even know how to fucking follow that.
Use your heart.
Okay. I like cypresses.
Yes.
You know how I'm like kind of generally anti-maple, or not anti-maple, but I'm just like not crazy about maples.
Okay, sure,
There's something
yeah.
about maples I don't love.
It's the syrup, isn't it?
That's actually one of the things I do love.
Oh.
I have the opposite feeling about cypress.
You really like them.
Yeah, I'm like,
You're all about 'em.
I'm like, I don't even know why. I just have like I get good vibes from cypresses.
Yeah,
They feel like Fozzie Bear. They feel like just like a friendly, folksy, redheaded mountain man who will make you flapjacks in the morning. Do you know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, and put maple syrup on them.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, I did not know this about you.
I don't know. It's just a friendly group. It's a friendly little clade.
Yeah.
And I like this one. I've never heard of a tree named Vietnam anything.
Yeah.
But I think in a lot of times when a tree is named after a place, I don't know. I find that maybe it doesn't totally fit in a way.
Okay, yeah,
it's
sure.
like it doesn't deserve, but this, if anything, this deserves the name Vietnam cypress.
It's got to be.
So I really respect that for it. I really respect it for that, and I like its cones a lot.
Yeah, they are adorable cones. I really want to snag one of these days, but I gotta find it. If I read the conifers.org observations, which is where you can go find these trees, it says to see this tree in habitat would require a great deal of effort, money, patience, and diplomacy. It can, however, be seen in some large botanic gardens and arboreta. And I just love that. Like, I love that he ends it with diplomacy.
Yeah, I like that guy's sense of humor.
Yeah, it's very much it feels like a Wes Anderson movie where
Totally.
it's like you can get there, but you need to bring your passport. What?
That's pretty cool. Yeah, a tree that really makes you earn it.
Yeah.
You know, that's nice. So I'm gonna give this tree. I'm not going quite as high as you, but I'm gonna give it a solid 7.25.
All right. I really want one day to give something a flimsy 7.5.
Right.
Like, this is a solid 7.5, but that one, that gets a flimsy 7.5.
Yeah, like
that means I'm going down.
Like out of pity.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah.
Like over time, it's going to go down naturally.
Yeah, there's going to be some depreciation there.
But this is a solid investment, this 7.5, this 2.5, excuse me.
Okay.
Maybe next year I'll give it an 8. Who knows? That was our discussion of the Vietnam cypress. It's now time for a completely arbitrary AMA. If you've got a question for the podcast and want to be read on air, become a Tremia member at arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Lots of cool things there, including the AMA. And this week we have one from Brad.
Hi, Brad.
Hi, Brad. Brad says, just a quick question. I'm going to do my Brad impression. Just a quick question. In one of those recent episodes, there was a question from a listener about a tree they saw in Sweden or Norway. You indicated it was most likely a bristlecone pine, which is super cool. But then you said something about this tree possibly growing in the harsh climates.
Whoa, Brad.
Like Anchorage.
You're getting pretty upset over there.
Is this true? As a resident of Anchorage and someone who's constantly outside and in the mountains hiking, I've never seen anything resembling a bristlecone pine. If you actually know where these trees exist up here north, I would love to know more details so I can go look for them and soak in their glory. Thanks, Brad.
Wow. That was a pretty intense impression. Now,
this is
artistic, right?
That's my reading.
Okay, yeah.
Brad seems like a very nice person. Thanks for listening, Brad.
Brad, this is a great question. Bristlecone pines do, in fact, grow in Anchorage, Alaska. When I was up in Anchorage for the only time so far, I had noticed those bristlecone pines growing there because I was actively looking because I was getting ready to write this book. And I was like, okay, what trees are in Anchorage? I got to pay attention up here. This is my only opportunity. And I ended up learning about several trees that I otherwise would not have known about. And this one I noticed because I was like,
That is a shocking discovery.
It was quite shocking to me because I actually found a few and went to one that was just outside my hotel. So I walked out to check it out because I was kind of like, do you guys just have random bristlecone pines growing up here? And then it kind of struck me that actually makes a lot of sense because it's a moist area. It has very harsh climates. So you can find them growing where there's lots of snow, where it's very cold and a short growing season. They do very well.
Is Anchorage hot in the summer, cold in the winter?
I don't think it's not quite that hot. No, okay. It's kind of like take everything about the Pacific Northwest in Portland or Seattle and then move all the meters down. So the hottest hot, not crazy hot.
Okay.
The coldest cold, crazy cold.
I gotcha.
So it gets lots of rain during the spring, during the fall. It gets very cold quickly and stays very cold because also it doesn't get any sunshine. So the sun goes down and doesn't come back up for a few months. And then in the summertime, it never quite goes down. So it just kind of gets very darkish light and then darkish light, then light.
Okay. But bristlecone pine likes that.
It
tolerates that.
It tolerates it, yes. So it can tolerate being at the top of the highest peaks and the harshest conditions in California and the Great Basin. So up there, it says, oh, this is actually totally fine with me. How cold it gets, I do this all the time.
Interesting.
And then it's also able to tolerate it because it doesn't really like, in my understanding, being like too hot all the time. So it's very well adapted to being very cold most of the time. So give it a little bit of water and it's like, actually, this is pretty nice. I'll take it.
But those are definitely planted there.
100%.
Okay.
Yes. They are not invasive as far as I know, but they will grow as like street trees or planted trees wherever anyone does. And I've actually found them at nurseries there because I looked up some nurseries and they also sell them. And I believe it is the Colorado bristlecone pine, which I believe is Pinus aristata.
Okay. What is the native range?
The native range, all of these grow pretty far south. So the highest one is the foxtail pine. So in the group, there's 3 different species. The foxtail pine grows at the highest along like Mount Eddy, kind of outside Mount Shasta.
Okay.
Then it grows again down in the sequoias in the kind of southern extent of the Sierra Nevada in California. Then the bristlecone pine that we know as the Intermountain or the Great Basin bristlecone pine grows also in the southern mountains of California, but then all throughout the highest mountains in Nevada and Arizona, and the highest in like the White Mountains in California is where there's a great, beautiful grove.
Anchorage is a long way from home.
Anchorage is, and the last ones grow over in the Rockies and the southern Rockies. That's where the Colorado bristlecone pine grows. So the highest elevations, like well above 6,000 or 7,000 feet, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is very much high in elevation where they live down here, but up there they live lower down, or they can live lower down in elevation.
I see.
Because there is, it's just as cold because you're at a higher latitude.
Cool.
Yeah, there you
How
go.
about that?
So, Brad, I guarantee, go out and check for a tree that looks like it's wearing a sweater because it keeps all of its needles for like 20 years.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so
Funny.
they look very like they're these giant fuzzy branches coming out all over the place.
I imagine the little boy from the little brother from A Christmas Story when he has all the coats on.
Yes, yeah. It's exactly like that, except with dozens of arms.
Oh, wow.
And they're all green, not red.
This is your fanfic, right?
Yeah, I'm into it.
Thanks so much, Brad, for your question. Thanks for the support. And if you want to support the podcast, head over to arbortrarypod.com. You can either join the Cone Club or the Tree Huggers, or you can buy a piece of merch from our merch store. We've got lots of cool things to see there. And you can wear a completely arbitrary shirt to work and have people say, "What is that?" And you can say,
I thought you were just going to end it there. No, wait, what is that? Conversation started, conversation ended.
an easy one. Casey, Clapp.
Alex Crowson.
My voice
Great
is
work
giving
today.
out, sorry.
My voice is giving out too, so I'm sorry that I tried to be patient and quiet today.
I think
it could be exciting.
I think it was a very measured. No, what is that word? A very
Yeah, measured is a good word.
episode.
Mellow.
Yeah, I think measured.
Moderated.
Metered.
Metered. Yeah, these are all good words.
Yeah. Marshmallow.
Marshmallow.
Okay.
We gotta go. Get out of here.
Thanks so much, everybody, for listening to Completely Arbitrary's Tropical Vacation. We'll see ya next week.
Bye. Completely Arbortrary is hosted by Casey Clapp and Alex Crowson.
Our music is by Aves and the Mini Vandals, and our artwork is by Jillian Barthold.
To support the podcast and get rewards in return, become a Treemium member at arbitrarypod.supercast.com.
Thanks for listening.